9.
We'll call the special meeting of City Council for Tuesday, October 1st to order. Our first order of business this morning is our delegations. We have Margaret Sutton, Patricia DeLorme, and delegates, along with the Council of Senior Citizens of BC in attendance regarding the United Nations International Day of Older Persons proclamation. So if I can ask the delegation to come up front and we'll read the proclamation. So is this representative?
You're in trouble now.
This is a little representative of the ladies outliving the men in terms of Statistics Canada. And running things as
We
well.
left them at home in the kitchen.
Welcome, everyone. It's nice to have you here this morning. Whereas the United Nations International Day of Older Persons celebrates the importance of the 71st anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and reaffirms the commitment to promoting the full and equal enjoyment of all people. And whereas the 2019 theme of the International Day of Older Persons is the journey to age equality. And whereas growing older does not diminish a person's inherent dignity and fundamental rights, and whereas the independence between older persons' social integration and the full enjoyment of their human rights cannot be ignored, as the degree to which older persons are socially integrated will directly affect their dignity and quality of life. Now, therefore, I do hereby proclaim October 1st, 2019 as International Day of Older Persons in Dawson Creek. So, first of all, thank you so much, all of you, for being here this morning and recognizing such a significant event and day for all of us. And obviously the work, profile, and passion that all of you have brought to our community helps build that quality of life for our community and certainly for our seniors, and we appreciate that.
All right.
Okay.
The floor is yours. Anyone who wants to say a few words.
I think that said it all. It is the United Nations International Day, so it's not just Canadian. And since I think about half of City Council fall into this category too, we're well represented.
Some of us don't.
Marquita, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I get really upset every time I go up to our local hospital. We've got seniors, at least 20, being warehoused. 4 to a room, not much bigger, 18 by 22. No bathroom. One down the hall. It's not wheelchair accessible. And I just wish our elected people would take as much interest and care in our seniors as they do the caribou and the whales.
Well, so certainly we can say that last week at the Union of BC Municipalities, we met with the Minister of Health to ensure that the new hospital gets underway and gets constructed.
And it's been how many months?
To ensure,
How many years?
so the planning is underway, and it will be out to tender next year for construction for that new hospital. And we are moving forward. Our council is with the dedication of the property up at the old Grandview School property to begin the data, to begin to do the analysis of what we need for housing in our community for seniors, and that's an important project that we are moving forward with.
We don't need a survey, we know what we need, and what we have now amounts to elder abuse
Yeah,
in the hospital.
if it was a prison, if you had 4 prisoners to a room that big, there'd be hell to pay.
No.
We agree that you know the process, like just so that we're not, I mean, if council could wave a wand and do it tomorrow, we would. It's just the realistic part of this, the study they want done. If we're gonna access funding from our provincial and federal governments, they require it. We don't have a choice to say we need it or we don't. We know what we need as well. That's the key issue. But, so as much and as frustrating, and would I put seniors ahead of Caribou? Every day of my life, I would, I can tell you.
But there's some have been up there for 2 and 3 years.
Well, those ones, we have to deal with those families, certainly. That's not acceptable.
No.
I think anybody would say that, so.
So, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in this morning. We
On
appreciate
a
it.
lighter note,
Oh, thanks, I thought our day was going.
the seniors are sponsoring a tea at 2 to 4 at the Seniors Hall for anybody who would like to come and celebrate Seniors Day with us. So please come.
Thank you so much. Thanks for coming in.
All right.
Next item, next item on the agenda is item 3, correspondence. 3.1, we have a letter from Jeff Ginter, General Manager of the Dawson Creek Curling Club. Councillor Parslow.
I'd like to move that we receive this for information.
Thank you. Second? Do I have a seconder? For a third time, do I have a seconder for information? Motion fails. Councillor Leckstrom.
I'll move we receive for discussion.
Second, Councillor Wilbur. Go ahead. Oh, sorry. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Go ahead.
Your Worship, the reason I do that, and Councillor Parslow, is I know they're in the gallery today. We began a process in talking about our budget and the concerns we have as a city, talking about we were going to look at everything. There seems to be, I certainly read Mr. Ginter's letter, expressed a number of valuable points, but concerned that this was a done deal. This is a process we're just beginning, and I wanted to be able to at least say that. I think everybody would agree. There will be no rock unturned as we go through Dawson Creek's budget. I can, as much, this is not about what we like or what we don't like. This is our ability to pay is what it's coming down to for the people of Dawson Creek. But you wrote the letter, you put some valuable points in there for our consideration. I thought at least having taken the time to come and sit here that we could let you know what we're going to do as a council. I'm one voice, as everybody else will have their views and we'll share them. As we move forward, I think communication and the discussion that you laid out in your letter is vitally important. Now, where that lands, I can't tell you. That would be an overall council decision. But that's why I wanted to at least have the opportunity for discussion on this, and I'll wrap it up and let others talk.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councillor Earl?
Yeah, I would just echo some of the sentiments expressed by Councillor Leckstrom. Specifically, in Mr. Ginter's letter, it cited a lack of consultation by the city. This particular, the previous report he cited didn't receive assent until last council meeting, so there wasn't really much to consult on because it wasn't direction provided by council at the time. Moving forward, certainly, I think it's all of our intent to consult. Similarly, with respect to suggesting that not all the exempted parties are doing the same kind of work, and there should be, that's a discussion we also is forthcoming, simply because we have to look at the exempted properties as one basket and then parse them. We can't, we needed the information before we could engage in that conversation at all, so I appreciate that critique. It is a little early to have that, though, simply because we haven't had the opportunity to have that conversation. And lastly, just say, as your worship is well aware, you appointed me liaison to the Athletic Association. So if, once again, if they do have a meeting they'd like me to be present for, they do have my phone number and my email address, and I'm certainly happy to make time for them whenever they'd like.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Javetkov?
Yeah, I found the letter was quite comprehensive. There are a lot of things in there. I think one of the issues that we hang our hat on is giving people a chance to talk, to approach council. This year, whole process seems to be accelerated to me. The deadline is the end of October, and you need more than 3 or 4 weeks for consultation. DCA, for example, you know, these people have other lives. Like the president is working up north, guiding. He's not around. So I think the points in here are important. The other thing is that this whole notion of having limits set for permissive taxes, to me, I prefer to look at it in a more simple method, in a direct method, looking at the list of permissive taxes and identifying ones that we agree with and ones that we don't agree with. And there are other ways to deal with leaseholders, for example, like the curling club, and that's to discuss on the basis of the lease, you know, getting maybe a lease fee that's more than $1 or something like that. This notion of putting limits, it doesn't give you an opportunity to look at the merits of each individual permissive tax that we're approving. It's more of a, I don't know, it's based on the top, or the cost, the higher cost organizations, or the higher value organizations, or the higher taxes will be affected, but 90% of them won't. So I appreciated the letter. I think there's a lot of good points in there, and hopefully we'll take heed of it.
Then that discussion is coming in our next section of the agenda on the report, so good, thank you. Further discussion? Motion? Do we need anything further? No? Reports, item 4.1, report 19-150 from the Chief Financial Officer regarding our permissive tax exemption report. Councillor Lexton?
I would move the report for discussion.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Earl. All in favor? Opposed? Carried? Okay, go ahead.
Just following through, so again, thanks to administration, we have asked you to provide this report. That was a request of council, so this isn't something administration just brought us to have us read more paper. We had asked for this. I think it will be important for the public to understand as we go through this. There's no intent that we would blindside anybody. I think most people at this table understand budgeting. I don't think you're going to be given short notice. You raised, certainly in the previous letter, we spoke about the importance of consultation, the importance of the delivery of services from different groups to this city about quality of life. That's a discussion we have to have together with the groups that are on this list. I do think that it is reasonable to say we want to go through the tax exempt bylaw, see who's on it, who needs to remain on it, maybe everybody, maybe not everybody. We don't know yet, but that discussion has to occur with council as we go through this, and not in isolation, but in consultation with the affected parties. So we may have questions, and again, I'm giving you one councillor's view. We may have questions, and I'll use the curling rink, for example. They operate a service for us, they're on the tax exempt bylaw. If we say that that's one we'd like to have more information on, we may very well engage with the executive of the curling club to say, hey, you're on that list, we have some questions. At the end of that, then we'll have the information we need. I mean, I see that happening with a number of groups possibly on that list. So the report, I can tell you a number of, just about a year ago now, when you look at our budget, we have some challenges. I mean, that's a fair statement in the city of Dawson Creek. We said we're going to look at everything. I think as we go through this, the leanings I have are certainly a full review of our bylaw. Timing is going to be everything. I would not want, and we have in the past, I can assure you, when the government's, higher levels of government have come to a city, our city, and I'll speak to that, and said, oh, we're changing your funding formula and it's kicking in 3 months. We have been extremely concerned about that. So I think there has to be a reasonable amount of time given discussion. And again, I know council has the ultimate authority to cast the vote. I'm guessing this discussion will carry on from this point through the next budget calendar year, and if changes are made, possibly, my leanings are for 2021, if any changes are made. But.
Thank you. Councillor Wilbur, then Councillor Parzal.
Just to add to that, I know in the past that when this has come up, and I do like the fact that it's recognized on here, there's 2 opportunities for groups to come forward once they've been notified. And I know we did have some come forward and say, look, this is what it means to us to have it, and council was able to have that discussion with them. So I do want to thank Mr. Ginter for his letter, because that does put the awareness out to those other groups as well, that they need to come and talk to us. We do, as Councillor Lekstrom has said, have to turn over every rock. That's reality. But I do like the fact that within the report and from staff that we're going to give those opportunities for public consultation. So I do think everybody that's on the list should have the opportunity to tell us what the ripple effect is. And I do agree that this is to the future, not immediate. So I just wanted to put that out there. But I enjoyed hearing from all of the groups, and it helped me make a decision last time on whether they stayed on the list or not.
Thank you. Councillor Parslow?
Yes, my reason for making my motion was because we were going to, it was already on our agenda, so we'd have a full discussion then. None of this changes the financial realities, and to try to minimize the situation we're in would not be helpful to the community. But I do concur with much of what Jeff put in his letter, and so my thinking is that we give ample time for questions raised in the letter to be answered. We give ample time to see how we're going to change this permissive tax exemption. People said we can't leave a stone unturned. No, we can't. It's that serious. Until people in the community realize what the council is trying to do and what we must do, then maybe we can have greater levels of synergy. So I can't see any aspects of this recommendation that I can support at this time. I'm glad Councillor Lekstrom said what he did about staff. I really think this suggestion that was put forward, it has a lot of merit to it, and I still believe that. But I do believe that we're in too much of a rush here, so I would like to make a motion that we defer making changes to the permissive tax exemption until end of January 2020, and during that time we have full consultation with affected parties.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Earl.
I wanted more of a clarification on the motion.
So,
Sorry.
sorry. Go ahead. So, could you repeat the
Can
motion?
you clarify, Charlie?
I can, yes, that we defer making a decision concerning any changes to the permissive tax exemption regime we have at this time until end of January 2020, so that we can have full and extensive consultations.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Lekstrom? Duncan?
So through your worship, just for clarification, that would result in any changes that are made, if made, taking
To the following
effect in
fiscal year.
2021.
Thank you, that
Okay,
was.
that was the clarification.
So we'll just clarify the timelines. We have by legislation October 31st. Any direction to the changes to the permissive tax exemption bylaw have to be passed with fourth reading by October 31st. And so Duncan?
Sorry, no, when you're done, your worship, sorry.
And so in order to get 3 readings, direct what changes we're proposing under the bylaw, need to get to 3 readings, and then we need to consult with the groups to advise them that their changes and status will change under the permissive tax exemption bylaw that we're proposing. So we would have to have perhaps 1 or 2 special meetings between now and then, and we would have to direct which organizations and what changes are going to be impacted by the bylaw. So I think it's prudent for us, in order for us to consider a major change or a significant change to how we've traditionally handled the permissive tax exemption bylaw, that it's exactly that process. We get through, we direct staff in terms of what those changes are we're recommending under the bylaw. Then we direct for the consultation and proceed with the bylaw on that basis for implementation by October 31st, 2020, for our 2021 budget. Duncan?
So through your worship, just talking about timelines and building off what you said, we have some requirements if you wanted to make changes for 2020 that we need to meet as far as publications within the newspaper. You would need to have your first 3 readings complete by October 10th in order to meet those timelines. So if you were to make changes for 2020, you would have a very busy next couple weeks allowing groups to come in and present their information. So it's very tight.
So that's this motion gives us for
A full year.
of 2020, October 31st, 2020, to make the changes for our 2021 budget.
Correct.
Councillor
Can I
Parslow, then Councillor
Yeah.
Lexton.
Can I speak to my motion? Thank you for your comments. They're perfectly in line with my thinking behind this. But some may ask, why did I say end of January? Well, with no criticism intended, from past experience, things can slide. So I want us to make the decision in plenty of time for lead into the next year budget process. If we put it to June, I have fears it would be July, August, and then we'd be into another pressure. There's no need to study it this fall, get on with it, be ready to make a decision at the end of January. Gives admin clarity of direction and gives the community clarity of direction.
Thank you. Councillor Lexton.
Just following through, and I understand, the intent, I fully supported. Any discussion we have in consultation with the affected groups would be based on a 2021 change, if any are coming forward. My concern with the January is that we are in budget discussions, we have significant issues to deal with on the 2020 budget forthcoming. I'm just not sure that we can do the due diligence we need. We may very well end up making the decision we want to meet with 10 groups on this list. I think that might rush us in the middle of our 2020 budget discussions. My preference, Councillor Parslow, would be a May or a June without question, with a firm deadline to say we will have dealt with it. People will know. They're going to be putting their budgets together for 2021 by that time, I'm guessing. But January, we can make it work. I think it's going to tighten our time frame for the budget discussions we need to have for 2020. That's my concern.
I think in terms of just thinking about the direction, if we direct staff that we want to have that bylaw that we're proposing completed by the end of January, and then that's a part of our budget deliberation, we've got the report so we can do that analysis of the direction of the bylaw that we want to propose, how the various groups may or may not be impacted, what might be directed, and then when we provide that direction, we can then schedule the follow-up from there, perhaps, in terms of doing that follow-up consultation work that may flow from there. Doesn't mean we have to have the bylaw done, but we have the direction to administration on the bylaw.
Okay.
And if we have that by the end of January, that's part of our budget deliberations, and it gets us an opportunity to give administration that direction, as well as then we can begin to reach out to community organizations that may be affected by that proposed change to the bylaw.
Okay.
Could I have the motion read back, just to make sure I got that? I just want to make sure of one word in there.
Through your worship, to defer changing the bylaw regime until the end of January 2020 and then having full consultation.
Perfect, because all we're proposing is the changes to the bylaw regime. We're not saying the bylaw has to be approved by then, right?
Can I speak to...
Go ahead, and then Blair.
That motion was shaped by many comments in Jeff's letter, but Jeff also talks about different groups have different fiscal years. Characteristically, some have it based upon the calendar year, some have it April 1st. So if we defer this until people are into their full fiscal year to June or May or end of April, we would be charged with, well, we've already got our budget set. And so I want to give people plenty warning whether they're a calendar year or the fiscal year. For many organizations, we cover both groups. Both groups will have a good period of warning.
Go ahead.
And just maybe for clarification, if I'm understanding the end of January, that would mean we would have had to meet with all of the groups by that time and put the new bylaw before us for consideration, as I understand that motion. and voted on by the end of January. So once January 31st hits, there's no more discussion. We've made our decision, not for 2020, but for 2021. Is that?
That's how I understand it.
That's my understanding.
Okay. And as long as we can meet with, and we may only have to meet with one group, 10 group, I don't know, but if that's the intent, we can make it work. But we want to make sure people have the time, as was pointed out in the letter, and I've had some discussions with others, that they can bring their views to us to say, hey, look, if you're considering this, we want you to be aware of this fact or that fact. Each group is unique to our city. So.
Councillor Colbert?
Well, also, I just wanted to add with the January timeline, it also gives us the opportunity to allow people to come as delegations and talk to us and not trying to cram them into 2 meetings and talk to everyone. It gives us that time to do that. And as Councillor Parzel has said, meet their fiscal year and still fit it in for, and have plenty, staff has plenty of time knowing at the end of January, this is what has to be done by, that they're saying that we're going to do in October. So.
Councillor Javetko?
I don't see the advantage of putting a end of January timeframe on here. I mean, we need a decision for October 31st, 2020. You cram everything, we're cramming everything right now into October. We see that as an issue. Now we're going to start our budget discussions. We've already got a fair amount of workload on budget for staff. Now we defer this into January, and there's a bunch more workload when we don't need the decision until October 31st of 2020. So why not put a reasonable date, for example, the end of September of 2020. It gives us, 8 or 9 months. We also have to consider the people that we're working with. Some of these people go away for the winter, so they're not available. So are they just left out, or do we consider the big picture? To me, rather than cram everything into January, it's just it increases the problems, the issues. When we don't need a decision until October 31st, why not set a date of the end of September or the end of August or whatever? Gives us some time. That way administration can make a reasonable schedule for dealing with these things. We can identify the people. We're not going to invite everybody on the permissive tax list to come in. Identify the ones that we're concerned about, that we think maybe shouldn't be on the list. Give them a heads up, give them time to prepare and come in. It's just a more reasonable approach. I just don't see an advantage to putting a deadline of January 31st.
So if I can clarify, in administration, you guys jump on me here any minute, anytime you feel. So Flavia has done a report on some proposed changes or considerations for a new permissive tax bylaw. And it's up to council then to take that information and give direction in terms of what changes to the bylaw and how we want to change that. That may affect some groups more than other groups. It may not affect, it may affect them all. And once we as council take this report and go through it and give that direction to administration on the proposed changes to the bylaw, then the process begins where we have to then start the advertising. We give the readings to the bylaw, and through that process then we consult with the groups who may be impacted by it, who then come and give us input into the proposed changes to the permissive tax exemption bylaw, at which time we then can go back and either reverse the 3 readings or move forward and adopt it. But it's a process. I think we have the report now from Flavia on some recommendations on the permissive tax bylaw, and it's up to us now. I don't see any further work for administration to do on this. This is now council's work to give the direction to administration on the proposed changes that we want to consider under the new bylaw, and then we begin the work of consultation and either approval or changes, modifications to that direction. Administration? Duncan?
So,
Flavia?
yeah, so through your worship, and I'll start, and Flavia will jump on me if I get it wrong.
So it's ultimately Flavia that's got all that.
Yeah, but, I mean, essentially, if you have the information in this report and you're not looking at new avenues, and you're not asking staff to provide a number of different options, if this is where you want to go, then I think it's fairly reasonable that we could meet that time frame. If you decide that there's some other areas that we'd like to look at and some other work that needs to be done, I would say, you know, we have a fairly robust strategic priorities that we're working on right now, whether it be, you know, transit or sub-regional or fire department or tourism. And, you know, I can say in the next coming months, you're going to be looking at transit probably in October and fire department in November, and working on sub-regional throughout that time. But if this is all you need, we can definitely meet that target. But if you're looking for a lot more information, it might be tough.
And that's council has to give that direction and discussion and say, okay, we now have the ability to give the direction on a proposed bylaw. Right. Blair, Councillor
Maybe
Electra?
just following through, I mean, having heard the discussion, the January deadline, I think if this motion passes, we can make it work. If by chance we get into discussions and that time frame is not going to be achievable, we can adjust it at that time, I think. I understand both sides of this, saying, look, we want to make sure we have people the ability to have time to come see us. We also need to meet all the different fiscal year ends. But if we vote on this and adopt the motion that's before us today, it would be the end of January. We would look for a final adoption of a new tax-exempt bylaw to be implemented for 2021. If in our discussions over the next 3 months, we determine that, you know what, we need additional time, then council can either amend that January deadline or not. If that would be my understanding.
Great part about living on. Further discussion on the motion that we are going to, go ahead, Councillor Jabecka.
I just had a question on, for this October 31st, whatever we adopt as a bylaw, are we bound for a 3-year term? Or can you just have it extended for 1 year?
Flavia?
No, if the bylaw stated specifically the year, which is going to be 2020, then it's applicable for 1 year. So it's in the bylaw where it's stated 1 or 3 years. Although our policy is stating that the organizations are eligible for 3 years. So then it's up to council to grant or not.
So we're going to adopt a bylaw that's now in place for 2020 for the budget year, fiscal year, taxation year. And when we change that bylaw, then it'll change in October 31st, 2020 for the 2021 taxation year.
So does that mean we have to change our policy?
Okay, Duncan?
Yeah, so through your worship, the charter requires an annual review of permissive taxes, and our policy requires groups to submit every 3 years, but annually you approve permissive taxes.
Okay.
So they're required to come and give us the overview of their operations once every 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Our policy, or the legislation, the bylaw is you have to renew it annually.
Yeah.
Further discussion? You ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Councillor Jabecka opposed. Thank you. 4-2. Oh, so go ahead.
Your worship, would we need a motion then, following up on what we've just done, to approve the permissive tax bylaw as existing today for the year 2020?
I think we'll bring it to the October 7th.
Okay, that's when
That
you
will
want
First
that?
three readings.
For the first reading.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll get
Thank you.
3 on the 7th and then the final on the 20th.
Which would be good.
Thank you. Next reports, 4-2, we have report 19153 from the Deputy Corporate Officer regarding invitation to tender the airport culvert replacement project. Councillor Parsons?
I move the report 19153 from the Deputy Corporate Officer, re-invitation to tender 2019-40 be received. Further, that the City of Dawson Creek award invitation to tender 2019-40 airport culvert replacement to Broadcourt Construction Limited for a price of $2,348,047.16 plus GST.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Earl, discussion? Councillor Lexner?
I mean, just speaking to it is nice to see that we had some local bidders here. Again, granting it to a local contractor is nice. You know, and this is more of a comment as we go through this. Change orders are always, the devil is in the details, so I know this is a fixed price contract as I understand it. All in, no change orders unless there is something substantially unforeseen that wasn't in the tender. Am I correct in that understanding?
So through your worship, a change order could result in essentially something that wasn't included in the scope of work that's found underground, or a condition that is outside of the control of the contractor.
Okay.
This entire project is funded by the grant funding through the federal government, and total project, we have one piece of the project is a culvert. The supply of the culvert was to PC Oilfield Services of $167,000 approximately, and the engineering consultant that will engineer the project. So this total project is a $2.7 million project, fully funded by federal government under grant project program. It really provides a significant improvement to the overall drainage to our community, both the north, the southeast, the entire drainage system flows down along the highway towards the airport and feeds into this major culvert into the creek. So not only is this fully funded, but it's a major piece of the overall improvement of infrastructure and drainage to the city. So we really appreciate that we got this funding available to do this project. Thanks, Duncan, for you guys and all the work and getting this thing done, and love that we, again, get fully funded and local suppliers or local businesses are getting the benefit of the work. Any further discussion? Councillor Javekov.
Yeah, I just have a comment on the, I appreciate administration accelerating the whole process here and getting to the point where today we're approving the
absolutely.
contract.
Yeah. Duncan?
So through your worship, spoke with the owner of Brocore, and just a brief update for council. If approved, this work would commence next week, and we're looking at a 2 to 3 week work schedule for completion of the dirt removal. So weather permitting, they will be on it. The culvert.
Don't even say that.
Culvert is on site. Materials are there, and you know, Cindy worked very hard at getting this all pulled together as far as that administrative side. So really worked hard to get the tender out in dates and etc.
Great job.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Further discussion? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Media questions? Rob, anything? Oh, sorry, Councillor Javekov.
I just have a question back on the permissive tax thing.
Oh, too late.
We're past that. We're past that.
On October 7th, if we decide that we want to remove somebody from the permissive tax list, is there enough time for consultation to get it all dealt with before the end of the month?
Duncan?
So through your worship, the timeline is you need to have your first 3 readings by October 10th and adopted on October 21st, and you need 2 public notices in the newspaper, which would happen on the 17th and 24th. So depending on how robust your consultation, you need to essentially have it all wrapped up by next Friday.
Timelines are going to make it very difficult in order to put into an advertising and get it done, and any changes to the bylaw this year. That's why really we wanted to get it in front today, because if we're considering directing changes to the bylaw, it has to be done in order to meet some of those timelines. Otherwise, we're having some special meetings in order to do that, starting at 10 o'clock. Councillor Earl and Councillor Wilbur.
So I was just under the impression, Your Worship, that the resolution we all voted on was to essentially defer
Yeah,
this.
so that's for the 2021. For the future, this was a question about if we wanted to make a change to this year's bylaw. Yeah. Councillor Wilbur?
Well, that kind of was, I was just going to say that's making an assumption that we're actually going to change something, because my thought process was we're leaving it as is and we're going to look towards the future.
So
You're safe, Paul.
the
You're
meeting-
safe.
The October 7th meeting is just a formality, so I could probably stay home then.
No.
I thought
We want you
were-
here.
I thought we were looking at the bylaw to see, there are some organizations that I think should be removed, like in my opinion. So,
Well, if that comes forward under that reading of the bylaw, we're going to have a very difficult time in meeting the timelines by the legislation for the advertising. We would require a special meeting or two. Okay.
And through your worship, and I know it just happened, but I'd have to go back to the motion. As I recall, it said defer any decisions
That's
until
right.
January, so it
That's
may be a
correct.
reconsideration.
That's correct.
Yeah. Thank you. Media question, Rob?
Kind of in the same realm. Regardless of timelines or the work, whether you're consulting with one group or 50, if council's going to take any bylaw to 3 readings, how do you avoid the impression that it's a done deal when it's right at the edge anyway?
That's right.
Regardless of the speed here, even if the deadline was October 2025, if you're going to take the bylaw to a 3rd reading, how do you avoid the impression that
Yeah, with every zoning bylaw, with every bylaw you deal with, you got those requirements of how you must meet the readings and the advertising and the consultation. And so for us, you need to get direction to administration on what the proposed changes are, give it the readings in order for it, and then begin the consultation period and process. And that's not unusual in terms of having a zoning bylaw where you have your public hearing, you get your second 2 readings or sometimes 3rd, and then some new information or information comes forward that you then would reconsider 3rd before you pass it. So it's not an unusual process, but it is legislation that requires us to handle that process of how we give direction, how we advertise, and how we adopt.
Oh, no, I understand the process. It's just
Yeah.
how do you avoid the impression that that's how, it's the content of Jeff's
Sure.
letter.
Yeah.
We're just going through the motion.
Just so that I'm clear in your question, so what my understanding as a counselor is we've got a discussion going on our tax exempt bylaw. We came here today and said, look, we're still going to have this discussion, but we want to assure people that are on that tax exempt bylaw today that for the year 2020, the tax exempt bylaw and the participants at this point are not changing, but we will have discussions and may have to engage in that for the year 2021. So the October 7th readings would be as they have been for previous years. Nobody would be, unless, yeah, but every counselor has the opportunity and mayor to make resolutions, and if they're passed, to change. But as it sits today, my understanding would be this is a status quo bylaw being brought forward to vote on at this point.
For another year. Yep.
Anything else? Good. Thank you. Motion to recess to closed. Councillor Wilbur? Councillor Earl? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. So we're going to recess for 5 minutes to close meeting. Thank you.